Montana Territory, 1878. The western sky burned crimson as shadows stretched across the valley, painting the frontier town of Elk Creek in hues of amber and gold. In this unforgiving land where only the resilient survived, 25-year-old Samuel Blackett had carved out a solitary existence, believing that a man who allowed himself to love only invited the pain of loss. Sam adjusted his Stetson as he guided his chestnut stallion down the rutted main street. 6 years of ranching had hardened his body and weathered his youthful face, yet his clear blue eyes retained a hint of the boy who had once dreamed of adventure. His shoulders, broad beneath his worn cotton shirt, carried the weight of a man who had seen too much death on the frontier. Despite his relative youth, the townspeople respected Sam for his quiet competence and unwavering word. A man's only true companions are his horse and his gun. His father had told him before dying of pneumonia 3 winters back. Sam had taken those words to heart, especially after watching his mother wither away from grief shortly thereafter. The harsh Montana wilderness had taught him that survival meant self-reliance, that attachment was a luxury he couldn't afford. His ranch, 20 acres of hard-won grazing land, demanded everything he had. As Sam dismounted outside the general store, he acknowledged what he wanted: to expand his herd, build a larger homestead, and secure his future against the coming winter. What he didn't admit, even to himself, was the hollow feeling that greeted him each night in his empty cabin. A man didn't need company to survive the frontier. Weakness like that got folks killed. "Evening, Mr. Raleigh," Sam called as he entered the store, the bell above the door announcing his arrival. "Got my usual order ready?" The shopkeeper looked up, his weathered face creasing with concern. "Been waiting on you, Sam. Got your supplies packed, but there's something else." Wagon broke down about 3 miles east. Family named Anderson. Father, mother, 2 sons, and a daughter. Father's got a broken leg. They're stuck bad with night coming. Sam's jaw tightened. Strangers meant complications. "Sheriff, no. Sheriff's tracking those cattle rustlers up north." Raleigh leaned across the counter. "They got a girl with them. About 19, I'd reckon. Pretty as a summer sunrise, but looking half scared to death. Not from the broken wagon, neither." Sam sighed, knowing what Raleigh was asking without saying it. "I'll ride out. See what can be done." The path east took Sam through golden meadows as the sun dipped lower. He spotted the wagon first, a weathered prairie schooner tilted at an awkward angle, one wheel splintered beyond repair. A thin tendril of smoke rose from a hastily built campfire. As he approached, Sam saw her. She stood apart from her family, her slender figure silhouetted against the fading light. Her dress, once fine blue calico, was travel-worn but clean. When she turned at the sound of his horse, Sam felt something unexpected tighten in his chest. Victoria Anderson was unlike any woman he'd encountered in the territory. Her chestnut hair, pulled back in a simple braid, caught the last rays of sunlight, and her wide hazel eyes held a wary intelligence that struck him immediately. At 19, she possessed a delicate beauty that seemed at odds with the harshness of frontier life, yet something in her straight shoulders spoke of untested strength. "You the help Mr. Raleigh sent?" called a gruff voice. A large man with a splinted leg sat propped against the wagon. "Yes, sir." Samuel Blackett. Sam dismounted, keeping his eyes purposely away from the girl. "I've got a ranch nearby. Can offer shelter till your wagon's fixed." Victoria's father, Ezra Anderson, sized Sam up with undisguised suspicion. "Appreciate the offer, but we can manage." "Father," Victoria stepped forward, her voice soft but firm. "Night's coming. The boys are exhausted." "I said we'll manage," Ezra snapped, his eyes flashing toward his daughter with such dismissive contempt that Sam felt his spine stiffen. "Worthless idea from a worthless girl," Ezra muttered. "Should have left you with your aunt in Chicago where you belong." Sam watched as Victoria's expression closed like a shuttered window, though her eyes remained dry and her chin lifted slightly. The practiced response of someone accustomed to such treatment. "Sir," Sam addressed Ezra carefully, "I've got a wagon at my ranch. Could have you all settled by nightfall. Would be safer for your family." Mrs. Anderson, a thin woman with anxious eyes, touched her husband's shoulder. "Ezra, please. Think of the children." After tense negotiation, Ezra reluctantly agreed. Sam helped load their essential belongings onto his horse, and with Victoria walking alongside, they began the journey to his ranch. The two younger boys trudged ahead with their mother, while Ezra rode Sam's horse, leaving Sam and Victoria several paces behind. "Thank you," Victoria said quietly as they walked. "My father, he doesn't adapt well to setbacks." "Frontier's full of setbacks," Sam replied, studying her profile in the fading light. "Some men take it harder than others. And some men shouldn't bring their families to face those setbacks," she said with unexpected bitterness. Something in her tone made Sam pause. "What brought your family west, Miss Anderson?" Victoria's mouth tightened. "Father's dreams. Always his dreams. Chicago wasn't grand enough. Our comfortable home wasn't sufficient. He heard tales of land for the taking and fortunes to be made." Her voice dropped. "Never mind that I had prospects there. Never mind that mother's health isn't strong." Prospects. Sam found himself curious despite his better judgment. "I taught at a small school." A smile ghosted across her lips. "I loved it. The children, the books." She glanced at him. "Father said teaching was no proper ambition for his daughter, that I was wasting my time with foolish notions." Before Sam could respond, they arrived at his ranch, a modest cabin with a barn and corral beside it. The land stretched out behind, dotted with cattle. It wasn't grand, but it was solid, built by his own hands. As Sam helped the family settle into his cabin, offering his own room to Mrs. Anderson and Victoria while he would sleep in the barn with the men, he couldn't help but notice how Victoria's eyes took in every detail of his home. The books stacked beside his chair, the carefully crafted furniture, the neatly kept supplies. "You built all this yourself?" she asked as he showed her where to find cooking supplies. "Every board," Sam said, unexpected pride warming his voice. "It's peaceful here," Victoria said. Something in her expression made Sam suddenly aware of how isolated his existence had been, how empty his home felt until this moment. That night, after ensuring everyone was settled, Sam sat outside on his porch steps, watching stars emerge in the vast Montana sky. The door opened behind him, and Victoria stepped out, a shawl wrapped around her shoulders against the evening chill. "May I join you?" she asked. Sam nodded, moving aside to make room on the step. They sat in silence for a moment, the night sounds of the prairie surrounding them. "How long have you been alone out here?" Victoria finally asked. 3 years since my parents passed. 6 years total on this land." Sam hadn't meant to answer so honestly, but something about the quiet darkness made it easier. "Do you ever get lonely?" Sam stiffened. "Man's got work to focus on. No time for lonely." Victoria studied the stars overhead. "In Chicago, even surrounded by people, I felt alone. Father made sure I understood my place, to be grateful for whatever marriage he arranged, to accept that my thoughts had little value." "Sounds like a hard way to live," Sam said carefully. "It taught me to keep my dreams small," Victoria replied. "To expect little." Something about her quiet dignity in the face of her father's cruelty stirred an unfamiliar protective instinct in Sam. Before he could respond, a coyote howled in the distance, reminding him of the wilderness that surrounded them and the folly of letting down his guard. "Should get some rest," he said abruptly, standing. "Morning comes early on a ranch." The next day revealed the full extent of Ezra Anderson's injury. The local doctor, summoned from town, pronounced it would be at least 6 weeks before he could travel again. Sam, against his better judgment, offered to let them stay. He told himself it was simple frontier hospitality, nothing to do with the way Victoria's face had lit up when she discovered his small bookshelf or how she hummed softly while helping with breakfast. As days stretched into weeks, Sam found his carefully ordered life transformed. Victoria took over teaching her brothers their lessons each morning, and Sam often found himself lingering nearby, listening to her clear voice explaining mathematics or history. Her mother regained some color in her cheeks as she rested properly for the first time in months. Only Ezra remained sullen, constantly criticizing his daughter and complaining about their delay. One evening, Sam found Victoria alone in his small vegetable garden, tears streaming silently down her face after a particularly vicious dressing down from her father. "You shouldn't let him speak to you that way," Sam said, the words escaping before he could stop them. Victoria wiped her eyes quickly. "It doesn't matter what he says. It matters if it isn't true." Sam stepped closer, fighting the urge to reach for her hand. "And it isn't true. What he says about you." She looked up, surprise clear in her tear-brightened eyes. "You don't even know me, Mr. Blackett." "I know enough." The conviction in his voice surprised even him. I know you're patient with your brothers. I know you're kind to your mother. I know you read my books with a hunger I've never seen. He paused. I know you deserve better than to be called worthless by anyone, least of all your father. Victoria stared at him, something fragile and hopeful dawning in her expression. The moment stretched between them, taut with possibility, until a shout from the house broke it. Victoria, where's that useless girl gone now? Ezra's voice carried across the yard. Sam watched her shoulders stiffen, her expression close off once more. I should go. As Victoria walked away, Sam remained in the garden, unsettled by how deeply her pain affected him. The solitary existence he had built seemed suddenly hollow, insufficient in a way he couldn't articulate. That night, as he lay awake in the barn, Sam confronted an uncomfortable truth. His fortress of isolation was crumbling, and Victoria Anderson had somehow slipped past defenses he hadn't known were vulnerable. The following weeks brought changes to Sam's ranch. With Victoria's help, his sparse cabin grew more comfortable. Curtains appeared at windows, wildflowers brightened the table, and evenings often ended with her reading aloud while Sam worked on leather repairs. Mrs. Anderson's health improved dramatically away from the trail's hardships, and the boys thrived under the structure of ranch life. Even Ezra's leg began to heal, though his temper remained as fractious as ever. Sam found himself sharing parts of his life he had never spoken of, his parents' deaths, his struggles during the first hard winters, his dreams for expanding the ranch. Victoria listened with an attention that made him feel truly heard for the first time in years. You've built something remarkable here, she told him one evening as they walked the property's edge, checking fences. Most men would have given up. Could say the same about you, Sam replied. Most women would have broken under your father's words. Victoria's smile held a hint of sadness. Perhaps I just learned to hide the breaks better. You shouldn't have to. The words came fiercely. Before Sam could stop himself, his hand reached for hers. The contact sent warmth spreading through his chest, dangerous and intoxicating. Victoria, you deserve. A gunshot cracked through the evening air, cutting off his words. Sam instinctively pulled Victoria behind him, scanning the horizon. Riders coming, called one of Victoria's brothers from near the house. 3 men on horseback approached the ranch, dust rising behind them. Sam recognized the leader immediately, Harlan Ryder, a local cattle baron whose land bordered Sam's. Ryder had been trying to buy Sam out for years, his offers growing less friendly with each refusal. Stay behind me, Sam murmured to Victoria, leading her back toward the house. Blackett, Ryder called, reining in his horse. Found some of my cattle mixed with yours again. His eyes narrowed when he spotted Victoria. Didn't know you had company. Family's staying while their wagon gets fixed, Sam said evenly. What's this about cattle? 5 of my heifers are wearing your brand now. Ryder's accusation hung in the air. That's rustling in these parts. You know that's not true, Ryder. Sam kept his voice level despite the rage building inside him. I've never stolen from anyone. My men found the evidence. Sheriff will be interested to hear about it. Ryder's gaze slid to Victoria again, something calculating in his expression. Unless we can come to an arrangement about that land of yours. Sam felt Victoria's hand tighten on his arm. There's no arrangement to make. Those aren't your cattle, and this isn't your land. Ryder's smile turned cold. We'll see what the sheriff says. Could be a hanging offense. He tipped his hat mockingly. Ma'am, sorry you've taken up with a rustler. Good evening to you. As the riders departed, Sam stood rigid with anger and fear. Rustling accusations were deadly serious on the frontier. Men had been hanged on less evidence. He's lying, Victoria said firmly. Anyone who knows you would know that. Doesn't matter. Ryder has influence with local officials. Sam ran a hand through his hair. He wants this land, and he's finally found leverage. Victoria stepped in front of him, her eyes blazing with a determination he hadn't seen before. Then we'll fight him. We'll prove he's lying. We. The word slipped out before Sam could stop it. Yes, we. Victoria held his gaze steadily. You've helped my family when we had nowhere to turn. Did you think I would simply stand by while a man threatens you unjustly? In that moment, something shifted inside Sam. A realization that the isolation he had built around himself wasn't protection but a prison of his own making. This woman, whom he had known barely a month, was willing to stand beside him against a threat that had nothing to do with her. Your father won't approve, Sam said finally. Victoria's chin lifted. My father doesn't approve of anything I do. That stopped mattering to me a long time ago. That night, after explaining the situation to the Andersons, Sam was surprised when Mrs. Anderson quietly offered help. My brother was a lawyer in Chicago. I know something of how evidence must be presented. Ezra had merely grunted his disapproval, though even he seemed disturbed by the rustling accusation. The next morning brought a new shock. The sheriff arrived not with accusations, but with news. Ryder's foreman had been caught rebranding cattle on neighboring properties. Ryder himself had fled the territory, leaving debts and angry investors behind. Seems he was desperate for your land to expand his holdings before his creditors caught up with him, the sheriff explained. You're cleared of any suspicion, Blackett. Relief washed through Sam, but as he turned to share the news with Victoria, he found her already packing the family's belongings. Ezra's leg had been declared sufficiently healed the previous day, and he was insistent on resuming their journey west immediately. We've imposed on Mr. Blackett's hospitality long enough, Ezra announced, his tone brooking no argument. We leave tomorrow morning. That evening, Sam found Victoria at the edge of the creek that ran through his property, her expression troubled as she watched the water flow past. You're leaving, he said, the words feeling inadequate for the turmoil inside him. Victoria nodded without looking up. Father is determined to reach Oregon before winter. And what are you determined to do? Sam asked, stepping closer. She finally turned to him, her eyes reflecting the same confusion he felt. I don't know anymore. For so long, I simply accepted that my path was whatever Father chose. But these weeks here, she hesitated. I've seen a different way to live. A life where what I think matters, where I might be valued. The unspoken question hung between them. Sam had never been good with words, had spent years believing that emotional attachments were liabilities on the frontier. Yet facing the prospect of Victoria leaving, he found himself struggling to breathe. I built this place believing a man needs nothing but himself to survive, Sam said finally. But surviving isn't the same as living. This past month has shown me that. Victoria's eyes widened slightly. What are you saying, Sam? I'm saying that you brought light into a home I didn't even realize was dark. He took her hand, his heart hammering. I'm saying that watching you leave would be like watching the sun set knowing it won't rise again. Hope flickered across Victoria's face, quickly followed by doubt. My father would never allow it. He has plans. I'm not asking your father, Sam interrupted gently. I'm asking you. The woman who taught me that isolation isn't strength. The woman who stood ready to defend me against false accusations. The woman who sees value in sharing knowledge, in creating home. He took a deep breath. Victoria, you're everything I've been waiting for without knowing I was waiting. Tears welled in Victoria's eyes. My father says I'm worthless, that I'll never amount to anything. Your father is wrong. Sam's voice grew fierce. You're the most worthy person I've ever known. Stay here, not as my guest, but as... He faltered, then found his courage. As my wife, if you'll have me. The proposal hung in the air between them, unexpected, yet somehow inevitable. Victoria's tears spilled over, but her smile bloomed like the first wildflowers after winter. Yes, she whispered. Yes. Their joy was short-lived. Ezra Anderson's rage upon hearing of their engagement shook the cabin's walls that evening. You think I'll let my daughter throw herself away on some dirt-poor rancher? He shouted. After all I've sacrificed to give her a proper future? The only future you've given her is one where she believes she has no value, Sam responded, standing his ground. I won't let you continue convincing her of that lie. She's my daughter. She leaves with this family tomorrow. Ezra's face had turned purple with rage. I'm staying, Father. Victoria's quiet voice cut through the tension. She stood in the doorway, her mother and brothers behind her, their expressions a mixture of shock and support. I'm going to marry Sam and build a life here. You'll do as I say, girl, Ezra growled. No. Victoria's single word held years of suppressed defiance. I am 19 years old. I have the right to choose my own path. Then you are no daughter of mine. Ezra's declaration fell like a physical blow. Victoria flinched, but didn't waver. If that's your choice, Father, I accept it. But it doesn't change mine. Mrs. Anderson stepped forward, her face pale but determined. Ezra, enough. She turned to her daughter. Victoria has found happiness. I won't let you take that from her, as you've taken so much else. The confrontation continued late into the night. But by morning, lines had been drawn that couldn't be uncrossed. The Anderson family prepared to leave, without Victoria. To everyone's surprise, her youngest brother, barely 12, announced he wished to stay as well. "I want to learn ranching," he declared, looking hopefully between Victoria and Sam. "And Victoria can keep teaching me." After much discussion, it was agreed that young Thomas would remain with them until the family was established in Oregon, with the possibility of staying permanently if he still wished to when spring came. Mrs. Anderson embraced her daughter fiercely before climbing into the repaired wagon. "Be happy," she whispered. "Show your father what you can become when you're free to grow." As the wagon disappeared over the eastern rise, Victoria stood between Sam and her brother, her hand firmly clasped in Sam's. For the first time in her life, she had chosen her own path, not in defiance of her father, but in affirmation of her own worth. The wedding took place 2 weeks later in Elk Creek's small church. The entire community turned out, curious about the young woman who had captured the solitary rancher's heart. Victoria wore a simple white dress with wildflowers in her hair, while Sam stood tall in his only good suit, his face transformed by happiness. "I take you, Victoria, as my wife," Sam said, his voice steady with certainty. "Not to complete me, but to journey with me. Not to need protection, but to face life's challenges as equals. I promise to remember every day that finding you was the greatest blessing of my life." Victoria's eyes shone as she responded, "I take you, Samuel, as my husband. I promise to build our home with truth, to face difficulties with courage, and to never forget that you saw worth in me when I had forgotten it myself." Their first year together brought challenges that tested their new bonds. A harsh winter threatened the cattle herd. Victoria's father sent a single letter demanding his son's return, which Thomas tearfully refused. News came that Ryder had returned to the territory, still bearing a grudge against Sam. Through each difficulty, Sam discovered that the vulnerability he had feared for so long actually made him stronger. Victoria's calm intelligence complemented his practical knowledge. Her determination matched his resilience. Together, they faced problems he would have shouldered alone before, finding solutions he might never have considered. By their first anniversary, the ranch had expanded. Victoria had started a small school for neighboring children, teaching 3 days a week in a room they'd added to the cabin. Thomas had blossomed into an enthusiastic young rancher, proudly riding alongside Sam to check the growing herd. On a warm summer evening, as they sat on their porch watching the sunset paint the mountains gold, Victoria placed Sam's hand gently on her stomach. "We'll need to add another room soon," she said, her eyes bright with joy. "For the newest Blackett." Sam's throat tightened with emotion as he pulled her close. The isolation that had once defined his existence was now filled with family, community, and purpose. The false safety of solitude had given way to the true strength found in love and connection. "I used to think the frontier was no place for family," Sam admitted, his hand still resting protectively over their unborn child. "That a man could only rely on himself out here." Victoria leaned her head against his shoulder. "And now," Sam looked out over the land they had nurtured together, then back at the woman who had transformed his understanding of worth and belonging. "Now I know that surviving alone isn't enough," he said softly. "It's who we survive for that gives meaning to this frontier life." As stars began to appear in the vast Montana sky, Sam and Victoria Blackett sat entwined, their shared future stretching before them like the endless western horizon, no longer a place of isolation and hardship, but a landscape of possibility, love, and home.